Hi, folks. Welcome to a FMR Nutrition Q&A. I am here with a member of our Fuel Squad, Ali Kiefer.
Hey, everybody.
And what we're going to be doing is answering some questions on nutrition that have been submitted by some high school athletes. We have a mix of questions. They're from both male and female athletes. And if you are watching this, you are either one of the athletes who submitted a question or their parents, or you're one of our FMR members over at advancingathletics.com. So just remember, those of you who submitted questions and are watching this, that you will have 30 days from the time you receive this email. And then afterwards, it'll be added to our FMR archive. So for there, as little as $5 a month, you can have access to this, as well as all the other recipes that Ali's going to be putting up, exercises and demonstrations that myself and Alex put up, who's our move lead, as well as lots of other content. For this video and all videos, we will have the questions timestamped. So you will see me reading the questions and giving Ali the information that she needs in order to be able to answer it accurately. Like, for example, the needs of a 20-something football player, that's in college is different than a 15-year-old cross-country runner, a female cross-country runner. Let's just, for example. So you can easily jump from question to question and by looking at the timestamps. And then that way you're able to see the questions or listen to the questions that you particular want to be that you are most interested in hearing the answers for. So remember, too, that some of these questions you may not have asked, but actually might be useful to know. So feel free to listen to those other ones. And a lot of them are not tied to specific genders. And so they can be really valuable information no matter, if the question was submitted by a female and you're a male.
So before we get started, I just wanted to remind everybody that this is purely educational. It is not medical advice. And if you have a question that requires medical advice, ideally setting up an appointment with a practitioner, either me, a sports doctor, anything like that, would benefit you a whole lot more.
If you need help finding those resources in your area, all you have to do is reach out, email us, fuelmoverecover@gmail.com. And we're more than happy to get you those resources.
Absolutely. We're happy to help with that.
First question is, for our first question, we have, what are good foods to eat before a workout? And how much time before the workout should I eat them? Ali, this is an athlete who is male and a long distance runner.
So I'm glad that you made that clarification because, of course, depending on your sport and your gender and a whole lot of other factors, this is going to depend a lot. This also depends on what time of day your workout or race or event or game is. So for example, if it's super early in the morning, you probably are not going to want to wake up and eat like a really heavy breakfast, right? Where you have eggs and cheese and sausage and bacon and toast and all of the things. It might just look more like a morning snack. So I'll talk more about timing later because we have a few questions about this actually. But I definitely want to get into the question of like what are and what maybe are not such great foods to eat before a workout. So the key here before a workout is we're looking for carbohydrates. Okay, so carbohydrates are our body's favorite and most efficient source of energy. These are our foods that like break down really quickly and provide your body with high quality, fast fuel that it needs for your exercise, right? So these are things like bread, pasta, rice, potatoes and sweet potatoes, oatmeal, cereal, fruits, crackers, some granola bars, things like that. The other things that we definitely want to be aware of with like a pre-workout meal is we want to be really careful of fats and fiber. Okay, so these nutrients actually take a lot longer to digest, and a lot of times they sit pretty heavy in our stomach. I don't know if any of you have ever been working out and you just kind of feel like you have this like ball of like in your stomach. A lot of times they cause like gas and bloating, and they also they just like feel really heavy in your stomach. So I definitely would warn against really high fat meals and really high fiber meals. So this would mean anything that's like creamy or greasy, thinking about like an Alfredo sauce, right? Or like a heavy, creamy coconut curry, right? Probably not the best options. Being careful of like high fat dairy products, as well as like nuts and seeds, beans, and then some of our vegetables that tend to be what we call like our gas producing vegetables in general. So this is like Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, things like that. You're going to feel a lot lighter and kind of reduce the risk of GI discomfort, like bloating and gas production and fatigue, honestly, before a workout, if you just kind of leave those things out. Just to give you guys a couple of examples of like higher carb, lower fat, lower fiber energy sources before a workout. This could be something like fruit, like a banana or an orange. I also really like the idea of like dehydrated fruits. So things like, raisins or cranberries, the apple chips, fruit leathers, things like that. Super easy to break down. Sugar is obviously that instant source of energy for our bodies. This could also be like toast or even like a rice cake or something with jam or jelly, some pretzels or crackers, a granola bar if it doesn't have a lot of like extra fats and nuts and things like that added to it. The last thing here that's really important too is water. And this is something that comes super naturally for some people and not quite so much for other people. Obviously, the goal is that we're well hydrated throughout the day, especially as an athlete. I definitely recommend keeping like a big old water bottle with you throughout the day and just sipping all day long. If that is not something that comes naturally for you, my emphasis here is that you want to make sure that you're able to get down at least 16 ounces, which is like a typical plastic water bottle, about an hour or two before you start exercising. You're going to sweat when you're exercising, so we want to make sure that you're well hydrated before that process happens.
Our next athlete says, or he wants to know, what are good foods to eat the night before / morning of a race?
So let's talk a little bit about timing. I said we had a couple of these questions. So like I said, this is going to depend a lot on what time of day your event is taking place, and it actually might require a little bit of planning. So I like to think about 3 like main types of meals before exercise. The first one is a large meal, and then we'll get to small meals and snacks a little bit later. So a large meal really should be like 3 to 4 hours or more before your race or workout or event takes place. So this is typically like a night before kind of meal, or even like a lunch if your event is taking place like later in the evening. So a classic large meal that I always think about just because it's reminiscent is like a pasta party, right? So before you have, your event the next day, right, you have like the breadsticks and the salad, and you've got, all the pastas with the different meats and sauces, and like you have a full spread. This is a large meal, okay? So especially if this is the night before your race, your body has more than enough time to take all of that food in and kind of digest it and process it for energy. What happens if we eat this large meal too close to the time of your race is that your body, number one, is not going to feel great. But number two, your body is actually using a lot of energy in that process of digestion, which is taking away from the amount of energy that you can actually exert for your workouts. So you're not going to be performing optimally because your energy is kind of being split between these 2 main roles. We definitely don't want that. For the most efficient and the most, optimal performance, all of your energy is going to be used for the task at hand. So that's that large meal. We want to make sure that it's at least 3 to 4 hours before your race so that by the time it comes around, you are like fully fueled, you're ready to go. The next type of meal is going to be a small meal, okay? So a small meal is like 2-ish hours before your race or your event. So for example, let's say that you have, a mid-morning race. Like this could be a breakfast. So just a small breakfast, okay? So it takes about 2 hours to digest. So that's kind of why we're in that 2 hour time window. And a small meal would be something maybe like a bowl of oatmeal with raisins, a turkey sandwich, maybe like some Greek yogurt with fruit and granola. You can see how those are still a meal, but much, much smaller than what you would experience at like a pasta party. Okay. That last type of meal is actually really just a snack. And a snack is something where we're eating like within an hour of that race. Okay. So this is where you want to be really super careful about the fats and the fibers, because if you're eating these really close to a race time, they're going to sit heavy in your stomach. You're probably not going to feel the best. So I would hear, those snacks that I mentioned up before, the things like, granola bar, fruit, toast with jam. Those are kind of, where I would look if you're looking for like a really easy to digest, carbohydrate rich pre-workout snack.
The next question is, how much protein should I be consuming a day? This question comes from a female athlete who does track, who runs track, but also plays basketball and volleyball.
So this is going to vary so widely depending on, number one, your age, your height, your weight, also your gender, the sport you play. There's so many factors that go into this. But I can go ahead and talk about like a calculation in 1 second that we can go through to help you figure it out. But I do want you to know that in general, as an athlete, regardless of your sport, you definitely require more protein than the average person. So the general range is 1.2 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So I know that sounds like, what on earth does that mean? But like I said, we can kind of walk through a calculation. And then if you need any help, you can reach out to me, send an email just to fuelmoverecover@gmail.com, and I can help you figure this out for yourself. Okay. But for an example, I'm just kind of going to go with like a 150-pound adult. That'll be like our example. Okay. So in order to figure out kilograms from that 150 pounds, basically what we're going to do is we're going to divide that 150 by 2.2, right? There's 2.2 kilograms in a pound. So when we do that, we figure out that this 150-pound adult weighs 68 kilograms, okay? Then is multiply that 68 kilograms by 1.2. That's that lower end of the recommended protein range for an athlete, okay? When we do that, we get 81, okay? So for this 150-pound, 68-kilogram person, the lower end of their protein needs for the day is 81 kilograms. In order to find that upper range, we're going to multiply that same 68 kilograms by 2, okay? So that gives us 136 grams. So basically, the appropriate protein range for that athlete would be between 81 and 136 grams of protein per day. Like I said, if you need help, please reach out, and I'm more than happy to help you with this. Other thing that I want to mention here is that, like you said, you run track, you play basketball, and you play volleyball, okay? I would consider all of those sports to be more on like the cardio side of things, unless you're like lifting heavy weights as cross training. Cardio tends to fall on like the lower half of that protein range. So let's say, for example, 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of your body weight. Okay. For weight training or strength training, it's going to be more on the higher end. You need more protein if you're lifting really heavy things. So I would say if you're more of like a weight or strength training focused athlete, it's probably going to be on that higher end of your protein needs. So about 1.6 to 2 grams per kilogram of protein.
Our next athlete who has a question is a female who plays softball. And she asks, what should I be eating before or after practices?
So this is going to depend a lot, again, on the time of, day that your event is, but also the type of athlete that you are. I actually answered a question about this earlier, so go ahead and look at the timestamp if you aren't watching this straight through, and you can figure out when I answered that question earlier. It was for a cross country and track athlete. Okay. So because you're a softball player, things are going to look a little bit different. So of course, the focus is going to be number one on our carbohydrates. Okay, so carbohydrates are our body's main source of energy. They're the most easily digested, and they're also the quickest source of energy. So they get into our bloodstream more quickly, provide you with fast fuel. Okay, so that's going to be your emphasis. As a softball player, you may need less carbohydrates, for example, than a cross country or a track athlete, just because you don't have that same like constant energy exertion. You're still working really hard. So, of course, you need those carbohydrates, but you are not necessarily like you wouldn't need as large of an amount of carbohydrates as someone who was running for an hour straight. The other thing to be really careful about with before practice is going to be our fats and our fiber. Okay. So, oppositely of how our carbohydrates are processed really quickly and broken down for fast fuel, our fats and our fibers take a lot longer to break down. So, basically, the digestion process is a lot longer. If we're eating a lot of fat or a lot of fiber or both before a workout, what happens is that it's going to sit really heavy in our stomach, and it's not going to be processed for fuel quickly enough to provide you with efficient energy for your workout. Okay. These nutrients can also tend to cause a lot of like bloating and gas discomfort, which is no good anytime, but especially during a workout. So the other thing that I want to address here is kind of the after practice. I haven't talked about that at all. So I think this is a really interesting topic because there's so much misinformation out there about the importance of refueling after exercise and what it is that our bodies really need at that time. Okay. So everyone's mind automatically goes to protein, right? You just worked out, protein, protein, protein. That's always the emphasis. And while protein is super important after a workout, carbohydrates are actually equally as important, not just before our workouts, but actually after. The reason for that is because we're using so many of them up during exercise. Remember, those are our main fuel source, okay? So by the time your practice is over, you have probably almost emptied your body's stores of carbohydrates. We store sugar as what we call glycogen in the body, and those stores kind of empty during our exercise. So in order to refuel and to be able to go on to your day without being exhausted, we have to refuel those stores. So we definitely want to replenish those carbohydrates. Within an hour of finishing that workout or that practice, I would recommend at least about 30 grams of carbohydrates. Okay. For reference, that's equal to like a 20-ounce bottle of Gatorade or like 2 slices of bread. Okay. So if you wanted to have a sandwich or if you wanted to have some toast with peanut butter or a Gatorade, all of those would actually provide you with just about the same amount of carbohydrates. On the website, you actually will be able to find examples of both pre and post workout meals. That's coming soon. So the other thing to emphasize here is, yes, the protein. Okay. So as far as protein goes, I would recommend about 10 to 20 grams of protein, again, within that hour of finishing your workout. Okay. So thinking about quick sources of protein, those are going to be things like bars and shakes, Greek yogurt, cheese, jerky, hard-boiled eggs, things like that. Those are also things that I like because they're mostly portable. And a lot of the times after a workout, we're not like going immediately home to eat a meal. Like you may have to go to school, right? So these are things that are portable that you can kind of keep with you that are those quick sources of protein that'll make sure that you're getting enough after a workout. Ideally, we're combining these things, right? We need both carbohydrates and protein to refuel after a workout. So some examples of those snacks would be, for example, like 2 hard-boiled eggs and maybe some veggies with hummus, or like some whole wheat toast with peanut butter and a banana. Again, we've got our carbs, we've got our protein, so you guys will be covered. Last thing is going to be water. Okay. So water is huge, especially after we exercise. Within that first hour, ideally, we're getting about 16 to 20 ounces of fluid. So again, 16 ounces is equal to about one of our typical like plastic water bottles. And then 20 ounces is the size of a bottle of Gatorade. So you kind of get to pick and choose how you spend those carbohydrates, but make sure you're refueling with fluids as well.
The next question is, how should meals be split up? Meaning like how many veggies versus fruit and etc.
The way that I like to visualize a meal, I'll call it a balanced meal. Okay. So a balanced meal always has four main components. Okay. We've got carbohydrates, we've got proteins, we've got fats, and we've got vegetables. Okay. We always want all of those things on our plate for it to be a complete balanced meal. Okay. The way that I like to explain it is very visually. So I want everyone to go ahead and imagine like a big old dinner plate, 9 or 10-inch dinner plate that you would typically eat a meal off of. If you cut that dinner plate in half, we actually want about half of our meal to be vegetables. Okay. Now, it does not matter to me if it's like a side salad to go along with whatever is your entree, or if it is a stir fry where you have a whole bunch of veggies mixed in. Doesn't matter to me as long as we're getting a good source of vegetables. On the other half of that plate, we're going to go ahead and cut that half in half again. So we have 2/4 of our plate. So 1/4 is going to be where your protein foods go. Okay. These protein foods, again, are things like our meat and seafood, eggs, cheese, nuts, things like that. The other 1/4 of our plate is where our starches and our carbohydrates go. Okay. So again, these are things like bread, pastas, rice, potatoes and sweet potatoes, tortillas, all of those guys. So you can see how all of those things are really, really important in order to build a complete and balanced meal. But that's kind of the ratio that we're looking for, right? So we want to make sure that instead of having, for example, a big old bowl of spaghetti with no protein and no vegetables, we're making sure that we have all of those things incorporated, okay? The last kind of main component of a meal that I didn't talk about at all is our fats, okay? The reason for that is because fats don't always necessarily have a spot on the plate. If we think about fats, these are things like butter, oil, mayonnaise, sour cream, salad dressing, avocados, peanut butter. Most of the time, these are either what our food is cooked in or they're going on top of another type of food, okay? The portions of these fats should be about 2 tablespoons, I would say, at a meal. So again, they're not taking up a huge section of that plate, but they're always present. Fats actually are a really, really important part of our meals. They just don't necessarily always tend to take up as much space, and they're much, much higher in calories. So technically the portion is supposed to be much smaller. So like I said, about 2 tablespoons of whatever fat or fats of your choosing at a balanced meal.
The next question we have from an athlete is, what are the best shakes to have?
So this is a very interesting topic. I very much emphasize what I call a food first approach, which means that I believe that 9 times out of 10, depending on people may have like a clinical condition or something where it's a little bit of a different situation, but 9 times out of 10, I believe that everything that your body needs can come from like natural whole foods. I'm not a huge fan of supplements in general, just because they kind of tend to complicate things a little bit. And they can actually be a really slippery slope since none of them are actually FDA regulated. So the FDA is the Food and Drug Administration, and they don't actually regulate supplements. Okay. That doesn't mean that they're all bad, right? It doesn't mean that you can't find a clean protein powder or a clean shake or anything like that. But what it means is that we really have to examine these supplements for additives like heavy metals and nitrates and stimulants, honestly. So we want to make sure that they're just made from simple, clean, natural ingredients as much as possible. Okay. In general, I like to look for supplements that are third-party tested because the FDA is not. certifying them. So this would be either by NSF or USP. So that's the National Sanitation Foundation or the United States Pharmacopoeia. They do testing on supplements to check for things like heavy metals and nitrates and stimulants. Okay. So the shakes that they certify are either by Garden of Life, which is actually a brand that I really do love, and then Muscle Milk, actually, which is kind of one of those shakes that everybody knows of, but that is NSF certified. Okay. Truly, like the best recommendation that I have for smoothies and shakes would be to make them at home with a protein source. So if you were to make, a protein shake or a protein smoothie, let's say with Greek yogurt and some spinach and a banana and berries and almond milk and honey, right? You're going to get a great source of protein, but there's nothing artificial or chemically based about that smoothie because you're using real whole foods. So if I had to give you any specific recommendation for a shake, that would be it, is to make it at home with some sort of, carb and protein source. If you are looking for specific recommendations, Fuel Move Recover members can find examples on the website, advancingathletics.com/FMR, or you can reach out to me. You can email me at fuelmoverecover@gmail.com, or you can send me a message on my social media. My Instagram is fullbelly_full_life. That's my Instagram handle, and we can link that below as well.
Our next and final question is from an athlete wondering what you recommend for pre-workout blends.
So I talk a little bit about supplements when we answer the question about best shakes. So use the timestamp for the best shakes question, and you can find a little bit of background on supplements. Again, I do recommend that any supplement that you use is third-party tested either by NSF or USP. I have a very food first approach. So if we can get, something that makes you feel good and gives you a little bit of energy, a little bit of a boost before a workout that's not from a supplement, that would be my preference. For example, some of those things are going to be coffee or iced coffee and maybe a piece of fruit, right? Really good, clean caffeine, a little bit of energy before a workout. So there are a couple of really great electrolyte additives that we can put just in a water that actually do contain a little bit of caffeine. So Nuun, Nuun, Liquid IV, and Hydrant all have an energy version that contain a little bit of caffeine. So if you are someone looking for that little bit of a boost before a workout, I would recommend those. They're super clean. They don't have any additives or anything like that. So I like those better than a typical pre-workout. I did look into a little bit of what pre-workout supplements actually are NSF certified. And the brands that they recommend are actually the Beachbody Performance, Vital Proteins, and then Clean with a K Athlete. So KLEAN Athlete. And all of those are NSF certified. So if you are absolutely an I must have my pre-workout kind of person, those are the brands that I would look into.
That's all we have for you in this Q&A with Allie. We hope you found the information useful and that we answered your questions if you were one of the people who submitted it. Remember that this will be live for 30 days. And then once that time has elapsed, then it'll be a part of the FMR archives. You can find those over at advancingathletics.com/FMR. So we thank Allie for taking time to answer these questions.
My pleasure.
And if you have further questions or somebody who has some questions that could maybe benefit from this, just go to advancingathletics.com. You'll see student athlete questionnaire at the top. Click on that link and then you can submit a question. Whenever we have a big enough group of questions, we will then reach out again with those. You just include your email and then you'll get an email alert to the video going live. Lastly, we want to thank all of the Fuel Move Recover members whose financial support to our platform allow us to do this. So Allie's able to take time out of her busy day, and we want to make sure that this is sustainable. And so we thank each and every member who contributes to this. If you're interested in that, you can go to advancedathletics.com/plans to figure out what options that we have that work best for you. Otherwise, you can reach out to us, fuelmoverecover@gmail, with any questions that you might have. You can follow us on social media, on Instagram at fuelmoverecover. Allie is at full_life. And I am at Michele Iono. Thank you very much.